I just looked in the mirror and found a business opportunity worth tens of millions. In the 1960s, the car wiper type ran at a constant speed, and the speed and frequency could not be adjusted according to the amount of rain, and the noise of rubber friction would be emitted from time to time. It is undoubtedly a huge torture for the driver. The continuous swaying wiper is more. To this end, the major automobile manufacturers are developing solutions. A university physics teacher, humorous teaching is deeply loved by students. He likes to make some small inventions in his spare time. When looking in the mirror this day, Bob had an inspiration. If he could invent a device that can automatically brush rain according to rain like human eyes, it would be an epic-making invention. Bob was so excited when he thought about it that he named the device the intermittent wiper. How? So Bob thought of using electronic components to intervene in the work of the motor. With the assistance of his two sons, Bob temporarily set up a research and development team, using transistors, capacitors and resistors to successfully make the wiper work intermittently. Bob understood that this invention would change the entire automobile industry. He stared at the model for tens of minutes. He thought that this invention could make his wife and children live a better life. What Bob could not think of was that he would pay a heavy price for this invention.
And its board of directors.
Must be. Later, Bob found a friend who made car glass. He showed his invention to his friends and boss. The boss was surprised by Bob's invention. You should know that all major car companies are studying this kind of wiper, but an ordinary university teacher took the lead. Bob offered to mass pro. However, his friend was very supportive of Bob, who applied for a patent for Bob through his own glass company. Soon, the boss found Bob again. After his research on the market, Ford was very interested in this new type of wiper. If Bob can take the order from Ford, a big company, then the boss is willing to pay for his invention, invest in and mass produce his intermittent wiper. The next day, a friend gave Bob a luxury car and asked him to install the wiper on it. Then the two came to Ford and decided to show them the. Ford's engineers couldn't wait to see the presentation, knowing that they had been working on it for a year without success. Then,
The heat can play havoc with some of the systems we've tried.
in order not to let the other party pry into the secret of his invention, Bob deliberately put the car back several meters away. When he turned on the wiper switch with confidence, the accident happened. The wiper, which had been debugged for countless times and operated normally, went on strike. After a careful examination of the newspaper, it was found that a fuse had been blown. After troubleshooting, Bob turned on the switch again. As the wiper swayed regularly, the engineers were all shocked. They couldn't believe that they would be defeated by an ordinary teacher. The engineer wondered if Bob was operating it manually in the car, but when Bob got out of the car, the rear wiper was still working in an incredible way. The engineer gave Bob some advice.
270 degrees.
The engineer said that he would truthfully report to the company's senior management, but when it came to formal negotiations, the person in charge of Ford asked Bob to provide them with a sample first on the grounds that he did not get the sample. They need to install the sample on the car and Although Bob still had some concerns, he thought that he had already applied for a patent, so he let down his guard and gave the other party a sample. Back home, Bob began to expect Ford's reply, and the family would pray for rain before dinner. It suddenly rained heavily that day. Bob drove. Bob also improved the wiper to manually adjust the speed of the wiper according to the amount of rain, which also caused the oncoming driver's puzzled eyes. For me. Next, Bob started his business plan. After getting the investment from his friend's boss, Bob quit his job as a school teacher. Just when he was full of ambition to do a big job, his friend brought him bad news, and Ford terminated the purchase plan. Since the two sides had not signed a contract before, Bob could only eat a dumb loss this time. Looking at the factory building under construction, Bob was extremely disappointed. Now he can only be forced to suspend his business plan, not only to return the investment funds of his friend's boss, but also to pay the penalty for ordering wiper motors. Bob's life fell to the bottom in an inn. But on a rainy day 3 months later, Bob accidentally saw that several cars were equipped with intermittent wipers, which made him realize something was wrong, so he quietly followed them to the Ford new car launch. It turns out that the cars just now are Ford's latest products, and intermittent. At this moment he noticed that the person in charge of Ford was not far away, and he could only suspend his plan. The security guard threw him out. Bob found a friend who wanted to sue Ford. The friend said he had contacted Ford, but the other party denied that he had embezzled Bob's patent.
Lie. Come on. No, I took apart one of their motors, Gil. You know what I found inside? Transistors, capacitors, variable resistors.
And his friend poured indigo water on him again. Ford has reapplied for the wiper patent, and the national law is not perfect for patent protection. If you want to file a lawsuit, you have to be ready for at least a few years. An ordinary person like Bob simply can't compete with a big factory with money and time. He asked Bob to go back to work first, and he would help him find a way to solve the matter. But Bob, who returned to school, had no intention of teaching anymore. He began to make frequent mistakes in class. Even simple formulas needed students' help to remind him. Bob called his friend to inquire about the progress, but his friend avoided him from answering the phone, so he found
Out of this.
This is Detroit, Bob. I did $17 million in business last year.
I'll go it alone.
No, leave it alone. Bob, it's not
In order to get conclusive evidence, Bob quietly followed a Ford's latest car and secretly removed the wiper device while the other party was not paying attention. Because he had no money for a lawyer, Bob and his wife gathered the information needed for the prosecution. However, the lawsuit dragged Bob and his family into a bottomless whirlpool. The road to safeguarding their rights was long and difficult. They sent countless letters of complaint to Ford, but they did not get a response. Long-term stress caused his wife to have a skin disease, and Bob suffered. Perhaps his friend was right at the beginning. He was no match for the big factory. Soon, the police found Bob on the bus. It turned out that his wife was worried about his safety and chose to call the police. Bob was sent to a mental hospital for 2 months of treatment. They fighting tea. After the doctor's evaluation, Bob was discharged from the hospital smoothly. His wife and children have been waiting for a long time. The family seems to be back to the happy time in the past, but Bob's heart is still very depressed. He can't forgive the damage that Ford has brought to him. He took the relief money and asked a lawyer to express his confidence in helping him win the lawsuit when he knew the remuneration. However, the most important thing was to get his patent first. Bob remembered that his patent was still in his friend's company. He didn't want to have any con. They wanted to settle with Bob and were willing to pay $250,000. He wrote a pledge not to pursue his patent. The lawyer thought it was a happy result, and even his wife persuaded him to accept the money to make peace. But Bob thinks Ford stole his creation.
It's a very expensive proposition. It's not a good play.
I'm not talking about play, Mr.
Bob wanted Ford to pay him back. The lawyer stated his commitment to the case, and he negotiated with the other party 15 times before he achieved such a result.
The jury gave you the recognition you so obviously, because you're fighting a corporation that does not know the meaning of years or money. They'll bury you with motions, injunctions. They'll drown you in so many irrelevant documents that you'll wake up with cold sweats.
However, Bob still decided to fight, and finally the lawyer decided not to help him and officially withdrew from the case. The wife also felt very incomprehensible about Bob's choice. The money was enough for the family to live a life of food and clothing. Bob said that he is not only doing this for himself, he also hopes to teach his children what is the right thing to do. The two quarreled for this and the whiff. After that, Bob began to fight alone. He got a job in the school library and read a lot of books about law after work every day to learn about patent cases. After another 4 years, Bob has now boiled white hair. The newspaper on the table that day gave him hope again. He took the newspaper to find his son, who was in college. His son is now a top student in the law department. It turns out that the country has introduced new laws and regulations on patents to specifically address those cases that can. Bob wants his son to be his defense lawyer, but his son has some resentment towards Bob. He thinks Bob is an incompetent father. Over the years, he has abandoned the original purpose of husband and wife for his own invention. His son, mother and younger brother and sister have not had a go. Bob knew that he had the initiative, and he was willing to reach a settlement with the other party, but only if Ford made a public apology in the newspaper. But the lawyer believes that it is an insult for a big company like Ford to admit plagiarism, and the company's owners and shareholders That day Bob in the warehouse looking for a lawsuit file, the son suddenly found the door. Although he complained about his father, he decided to help him after thinking about it. He didn't want to see his father alone. Soon the court accepted Bob's patent lawsuit, and his son attended his Bo. This is the first time in 12 years that Bob and Ford have met with Bo Gong Tang. Ford took out the design drawings of intermittent wipers and explained their design and working principle in detail. They also moved the model to the trial site. Seeing this, Bob took out the patent he had applied. It is said that Bob's invention does not meet the conditions for patent application. He just combined some common electronic components. Such a basic construction is so common in the electronic field that it cannot be called an invention at all. Ford wanted to get Bob's patent annulled so th.
It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom.
He questioned Ford. The words in the book are Dickens invented. Then Bob took out a dictionary and said that all the words in this book were in the dictionary. Dickens did not invent any word. He just sorted the common words and combined them together. Can it be said that he did not create new things? Bob's comments hit Ford hard in the face, and the jury.
Guess I should be thinking about going to law school.
They said it's been going great. I'm glad.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Soon, the trial continued. According to the patent law, Bob needs to say the idea of an invention patent, and he owes the credit to his wife. Years ago, he was driving home with his wife, and the wiper that kept working interfered with his vision. When he returned home and looked in the mirror, Bob had a whim. If the wiper could work like a human eye, when needed and wipe away the rain, it would definitely help more drivers eliminate the trouble of driving on rainy days. Therefore, he came up with the inspiration of the development of In the evening, Ford's lawyers found Bob again. This time they offered 10 million yuan, hoping to reach a settlement with Bob in court. This money was enough for him and his children to live an enviable life. Bob knew he was indebted to the children over the years, so he left the decision too. At the trial the next day, Ford once again complained to Bob. They found out Bob's history of psychiatric treatment many years ago. Bob did not deny it. Ford believed that what Bob said before was not credible, which made the jury begin to doubt him. Ford went on to tell the jury that, in fact, their engineers also have the ability to research and development, but Bob was the first to register a patent. He believes that Bob's patent should be ruled invalid. At the end of the closing stage, Bob spoke generously.
And why is that? Because he can't.
Their influence and their money and all their corporate power.
They have the arrogance to sit here and look you in the eye and say, no, the Ford company didn't do anything wrong. No, they knew it all along.
When I walked into this courtroom, I was wearing a badge. Right here. You couldn't see it. Said I was an inventor, contributor to society.
So I'm not going to sit up here and try and interpret everything you've heard for these past few weeks. Just going to ask you to use your memory.
After deliberation by the members of the jury, they finally gave the results of this trial. Regarding Bob's patent case against Ford, the jury found that Ford had infringed Bob's wiper patent and, considering the damage to Bob caused by the infringement, sentenced Ford to pay Bob $11 million in. Bob waited 12 years for this moment, for which he lost his job, his family and his wife. Pleased at Bob's win, the wife quietly left the court. Bob rushed out.
Congratulations.
Before Bob could ask to stay, the appearance of friends interrupted the critical moment. In the end, they didn't know whether they would get together again. Bob and the children came to the restaurant to celebrate the success of the invention, when the skies suddenly began to rain heavily. Looking at the heavy rain outside the window, Bob has mixed feelings. For justice, he has lost 12 years in the life of his family, but he believes that it is all worth it. This is a film based on a true story. The protagonist Bob is the inventor of intermittent wiper. After the verity, persistence is like a double-edged sword, which can not only bring respect and praise, but also bring pain and loss. Persistence shreds the quiet life and allows us to win from it. People who plagiarize will pay the price. Let us pay tribute to those unknown inventors. It is their inventions and innovations that light up the stars of our lives, like a beacon in the night sky, leading us to a better future.